Ho ho ho, ladies, gentlemen, gamers, and fellow horror movie enjoyers and enthusiasts, and fellow Art the Clown lovers. Welcome back. So, I saw Terrifier 2. Hot off the heels of Terrifier 1, quite literally the same as yesterday, because I'm recording this a day after. Um, I have a lot to say in this one. I'm gonna be straight up honest. So, as always, I'm gonna try and stay away from spoilers in about this movie, Terrifier 2. I might have to touch on some spoilers for Terrifier 1, so be forewarned. However, we have a little bit more to say. So, one of the things I'd be remiss to say that I forgot to say in the first one was I actually do have a little bit of a basis to kind of, I don't want to say review these because this isn't a professional review, it's more of a reaction. I mean, I guess it's a, it's a review, but a layman's review, right? I'm not like a professional, but believe it or not, when I was in college, I actually did take a horror movie class. Well, what great money I spent on that, right? But I took a horror movie class that really got into the nitty gritty of horror movies, the oldies, the old school stuff, what made it good, what made it bad, what makes them up, the different genres, slashers, stuff like that. Not that I remember some of it, but regardless, I do have a little bit of a basis, so it's not like I'm completely talking out of my ass here. But coming hot off the first one, if you didn't go see that review, and again, you don't want to be spoiled, watch the first movie and watch the first review. You've been warned. But I really, really liked the first movie. Now, there's three of them out, right? The second one's been out for a little bit, and the third one literally came out about 3 days ago. And we watched the second one. I don't know when me and my friends are going to watch the third one, but coming off the first one, I was very excited. I was very hype, right? As you could tell from the first one's review, I really liked it. Now, I'll just be straight up honest. I don't think the second one was as good as the first one, but obviously I need to explain why. So, this one had a much higher budget. The first one had a budget of about $30,000, 35,000 somewhere around there. This second one had a budget of about, I think, 250,000. Now, somehow this was good enough to get a third one with 3 million. So I guess the second one did good enough to where it warranted this, but the second one had a higher budget, and with that comes a lot more good stuff overall. Like the average line of quality did go up in a lot of places, but in other places I feel like the film kind of lost its way. So, for those of you who really don't know or don't care about spoilers for the first movie, what is Terrifier 2 about? To give a little bit of a synopsis here, right? There's a clown called Art the Clown. We don't know what he is. We don't know if he's a man. We don't know if he's a demon because, and not only him, but some of the people in this shit too. But he basically is going around just terrorizing people because he thinks it's funny. One of the best things from the first movie, because one of the great things about horror movies is the fact that we don't know why the monster's doing what it is, right? I'll refer to Art the Clown as the monster, among other things probably, but Art the Clown the monster, we don't know his motivations. We don't know if he's sick, if he's demented, if he's twisted, if he was wronged, if he's a demon, if he's a human. And I think that kind of plays a good part into the horror genre of not knowing why. Now, they kind of touch on this more in the first movie, where they kind of trying to allude to certain things. And, the one big thing in the first movie that kind of taught me this, or not taught me this, that showed me this, was the scene where Art was being consoled by a homeless woman, and she was like, "Oh, have you ever felt a mother's touch? Is there no mercy in your heart?" And she kind of consoles him, and he puts his thumb in his mouth. He's sucking it, and she's rocking him, right? And then obviously we see that was a ploy. So it really makes you question: was he just doing that to fuck with her? Because Art is a fucked up entity, right? But he's funny, and that's one of the strengths of the first movie that is kind of still returning in the second movie, although a little degraded. So overall, the big synopsis is Art the Clown is here, and he's just causing mischief and panic. Now, one thing I'll say is there's a little bit more of a storyline to this movie than there is in the first one. But first things first, this movie is long, right? I will just put that up front. This movie I felt like was way longer than the first one. So not only was it that, but obviously the quality was better. I think the acting overall was better. The environments were better. The first one, they really had a limited budget, and I think that was part of its charm, right? That's what I said in the first review. Part of the charm was they had to really use these things creatively because they only had a couple sets. Here, it's a lot more varied. You could tell the quality did go up. The acting is better. Again, there's more environments, varied environments. There's an actual storyline too. They try and weave in a storyline, but they don't really go anywhere with it, which is one of the main issues. At least I felt so, right? Now, obviously, there's a third one, so maybe it continues there, because this film is a direct sequel to the first one. Like, the first one ends, and the second one begins just straight up, like, right where it ends. So, it's not like we're having a time skip or anything. There is chronological order to these things, but one thing that, again, I thought was good from the first film was Art the Clown. I think Art the Clown was the best thing. Now, in the second film, Art the Clown is still funny. He's still there doing his wacky random shit. But I feel like they toned it down a lot, or at the very least, I don't know if the director stayed the same or if he lost his vision. But I feel like Art in the first one was more random. Obviously, there's gore, right? This is more of like a gory slash film, sometimes suspense, sometimes thriller. But I feel like there was a more visceral reaction to the gore in one than there was in two. Now, maybe it's because I came in expecting more, right? Because one shocked me, because I was like, okay, this is just a horror movie, we might see people dying, sure. But what they showed in one, I was like, oh, I didn't expect this. They showed some graphic shit in one. And I'm not just talking about like graphic kills, I'm talking about like just graphic stuff in general. I don't want to spoil it too much, but and two, they kind of allude to the fact too, and especially in the beginning, I think they started off strong with like not only just the shock factor, but the gross factor. But after that, the gore is still pretty gory. There is some pretty creative stuff, but I feel like there was only a couple. I don't want to say it was terrible, but there was only a couple of things that really shocked me with the gore. It felt more that in the first one, Art the Clown was doing gore, but was also like mentally deranged and being creepy and also funny, right? In this one, a lot of the times he's doing that, but I feel like for half the film, Art's just doing gore and nothing else. Again, in the first film, I'll spoil this little thing. He gets naked. He starts dancing. He's wearing people's skin. He starts just riding a trike for no reason. And he does do a lot of that stuff in the beginning half of the first movie. He does random ass shit. But in the second half, I feel like he just turns into a classic, just killer villain that is just trying to kill people, and he's not really being too funny with it. It's still there a little bit, but I feel like it gets lessened. And another detriment, even though the film is longer, I feel like there's a lot of times where Art isn't there, where you're getting a lot of story exposition, you're getting a lot of seeing the characters and what they're doing that's, not Art, which again, the acting was higher quality for these people than from the first one, but it's just like I don't care. It's like these things don't really matter. Like, what is the point of this? So you see a lot more stuff that is high quality, but it's stuff that doesn't necessarily matter or doesn't really make a difference to me. And it was really weird because, again, in a lot of ways, the film is higher quality, but it's just stuff that doesn't really contribute to anything. The plot line that happened literally at the end got so nonsensical, and I'm not going to spoil anything here, but there was a disbelief I had in the first movie where it's just like, okay, this doesn't make sense, right? It's the classic horror tropes. They're running, they don't know where they came from, they're getting lost, they're not fighting back. Even though I think they fought back a lot more in the first one than they did the second one, at some points at least. But this is where, like, certain things didn't make sense, but it was so goofy, you could sort of like forgive it. In the second one, there's things that happen that are just like dumb. Like, I don't know how best to describe it without spoiling it, but it really feels like the story being so long really just led to things dragging on. And again, in the second half of the movie, it really just felt like one long thing, which kind of just felt repetitive. Again, I don't want to say it's all bad. I know I'm sounding negative. I still think the movie was good. But the first one had this certain flair, pizzazz, and a lot of, I don't want to say struggle, but Art felt a lot more just weird. In this one, again, he feels weird in the first half and a little bit in the second, but it just doesn't make sense. And the plot gets just so crazy. Like, it really feels like something out of an anime at the end where it's like, what the fuck is even happening? And they give you little crumbs and little tidbits here and there of like, oh, this is connected to that. Oh, we have this in our history. Oh, like what's happening? But you never get any definitive. and anything to really go off of. And again, it just feels like okay, why did I stay here for the whole journey if it's not really going to connect anywhere? And again, the biggest caveat to this is maybe in 3 something's going to happen, but it was just like, what the fuck even is this? It's just so nonsensical. Now, another thing that I wanted to get to, I'm like trying to organize my thoughts here because I'm still shocked by what I just saw. Um, Another thing I wanted to get to is there's a lot of stuff, and again, there's a suspension of disbelief from the first one you can have because it's goofy. Like it's like, oh, classic horror movie things, right? In this one, there's sort of not the suspension of disbelief when things are just weird and wrong. And again, I could be completely out of my league here if they tie it back in, but there's like a couple of big plot holes in the story. It's not just like foregoing reality here, right? It's not just like, oh, the character came and they don't know where to go. No, it's things are established here by certain characters and they're completely broken by other characters. And it's a big thing I want to mention where it's basically, is someone there versus are they not there? And it's like, I can't say too much more without spoiling it, but it happens very early on where you see someone notice something and something is very clearly not there when there's two things there in one person's point of view, but another person's point of view they're not, but then they are again. It's really weird, and I know I'm being vague and it's really sad, but it is what it is. So overall, looking at the film again, it's just really weird how it feels like Art lost a lot of his mojo. And the film got rated higher than the first one, and I honestly think that's because overall it did improve in a lot of other aspects, like the scenery, the visuals. Like the visuals look a lot better. Again, the acting is a lot better, the scenery is a lot better. But it just got so nonsensical, especially at the end, and it feels like it lost a lot of what made Art funny. Because Art is always the main attraction, right? It feels like it really dragged on sometimes too, where it's like, okay, we're getting a lot of fluff here and there. Where's Art? What is he doing? Why is he doing it? Well, not really why, right? But it's like he wasn't just as random, and it took a lot of time sometimes to get to him. Where I was like, wow, this movie's really long and it's really dragging. It's like holy fucking shit. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for Terrifier 2. I was really hoping it would, blow me out the water after Terrifier 1, but it didn't. Sadly it didn't. And I hope I've explained why. Now, maybe other people think differently. Obviously it was rated higher, but I'd really be curious what other people thought. If you saw one and you saw two, what you thought. If not, I hope my thing was insightful. I would still watch the movie because again, there is funny moments in it, which is weird, right? Because you're going into horror to be scared, and sometimes it's scary. But I feel like these moments, not only do they take long to come, but when they do come, they're sort of elongated. Where it's like, okay, now we're in the chase, or now we're in like the fight for a while, and not only is it nonsensical, does not make sense, but it just feels like it's sort of like what's happening to the gaming industry. It got corporatized, it lost its soul, and it just feels sort of hollow in a way. So the film is still good, but it's not as great as the first one. I think the first one was funnier, especially with the whole idea of like Art being this thing, and they tried to add lore to him, and especially with what happens at the end, it's like, okay, what's going on? But when I say the end, I mean the very end, like the end credits. It's like, okay, wow, this is certainly something. It's just like I feel like it dragged on a little too long and it lost a little bit of the soul of the first one, to put it bluntly. Still enjoyable, just really not as good as the first one. So sadly, by this logic, and I rated the first one so low. If I could go back, I'd probably rate a little higher now, considering what I know about this one. But I would rate this one because the first one is I would say a lot better if you go into it blind. But this one isn't terrible by any means, but I would definitely think the first one is better, even though there's a lot higher quality in this one. So sadly, I'm gonna have to rate Terrifier 2 6.5 clowns out of 10. There's a lot of issues in here that's just like, it's going past the point where you can laugh at it. It's gonna make you scratch your head, be like, okay, what's going on? Things are kind of dragging. Things aren't gonna make sense. At least to me, right? At least to me. But either way, that's gonna be my review of Terrifier 2. I hope everyone enjoyed. Again, please tell me what you thought of it if you've seen it, because I'm really curious to see what other people think. But also, if you enjoyed what I do, please watch me at Twitch TV/Tecnics channel. Ooh ooh ooh.